Hey students, I wanted a chance to talk to you a little bit about what's going on with getting our paper ready to go. So I wanted to show you some of the papers that have been done in the past so that we can talk about what you need to do with your paper. So I'm going to start with this paper, which is from someone last year. And I'm just going to quickly scroll through it so that you're thinking about what do I want to have in my paper as I think about finishing it up. So you can see on page 1, this person has the title, and then they have their question, and then they have their word count, and it says AP Research. Then they have a table of contents. You can do a table of contents, or you don't have to. This person chose to do an abstract, which is of 100 to 150 words kind of overview of what your topic is about. Then they have their introduction, and then they have background, because this is a pretty scientific topic, so they had to explain it. Then they talk about what is the gap that they noticed in the research, and then they get to their research question. Then notice the rest of the page is empty, so then they get to the next topic. Review of literature, so then they have their categories, as you can see, that are all broken out. Everything's in the same font. All the topics are in bold, and they're the same size. So some of you that have things that are in weird fonts and sizes, then they have their conclusion to their lit review. Then they have their methodology, so they talk about the structure of it, how it was set up. Then they get into before the survey, and then section 1 of the survey, section 2, section 3, so they had it broken up. Then, so they kind of explain the survey, then they get into what did they find in the survey with the data. So here's a little summary of the data, just how many people did it. This person talked about their limitations here. Then they got into some bias items they noticed, and so you see a chart. They talked about gender and ethnic groups in their survey, religious parent group. Then they created some more pie graphs, education groups, so they had different categories. Then here's where they analyzed their data. So they showed you what their question looked like. Then they analyzed question 1. Then here's question 2, a graph. Then they analyzed it. Here's question 3, question 4. So if you notice, not every question has to have a graph. So then they just kind of go through each question. Group review, kind of an overall. Then end matter is kind of final conclusion, what would happen next. And then they get into their appendix. So these are some graphs they never used, but they're there. People wanted to look at them. And so you can see there's a lot of extra graphs that this person had that never got put into the body of the paper. Then they have their bibliography. So here's another example from last year. Title of the paper, word count. Here's a table of contents. It looks different than the last one. Here's kind of the introduction to what they were going to do, their lit review. Notice how all of the formatting looks good. It's all the same throughout every page. So here's the lit review, which we'll just scroll through. Then we get to the methodology, same format, so an explanation. Kind of they did an experiment and they did a survey, so they explained both of those. Then they get into their analysis, so here's their demographics, like I've told a lot of you to have a demographic section, race and sex. And then they did something about sleep and secondhand smoking, so they have some graphs and explain that. So you can see that section. Kind of they were trying to see if there's a relationship between something in 2 different categories. And so you can see they have a lot of graphs and charts. Here's a summary. Then they did some experiments with people, kind of like some of you are doing, like people doing advertising charts and things like that. So then they explained that, then they summarized it. Then they got into their conclusion, their limitations, future research, implications, like what does that mean? And then the works cited. Here's the third one. So you can see topic, word count, table of contents, abstract. So it's another one with an abstract. Here's their introduction, their lit review. They did their citations a little bit differently. So you can see they do them at the bottom. They have a couple charts in there also. So if we scroll all the way down, here's their methodology and explanation of the methodologies. They did some interviews, so those are their experts. Then here's their data analysis. They have some different counties they were comparing, so they showed all the data up front. So it's a little different format with no explanation. And then they start explaining what those things mean. So that would be another way to do it. Then they have some more charts. Then they explain those. Then they made some more charts. So you can see then they explain those. So it's a little different setup where they do all the charts at once and then they explain them at the bottom. That's another idea. They have their limitations, their conclusion, future research, and then their appendix. So those are just some different examples of what you can do from kids in the past, how to set your paper up.